This past week, 343 did another one of their Ask 343 videos where they go through and they ask a bunch of Q&A questions from the community to give us some insights into how Halo Infinite's coming and some of the design decisions that they have chosen for the game. In this Q&A video, there were specifically some questions that were asked that have really put the community up in arms once again. And so we're going to talk about a couple of those, and we're also going to talk about just the whole premise on the Halo community and how people seem to really get upset over everything. And I think this does a lot more harm than it does good. So let's just jump right into the video. So if you watched the Q&A video from 343, the main things that I kind of picked up are there's going to be no Playable Elites, no dual wielding, and we're only going to have one main biome that's Pacific Northwest inspired, and then I assume they're going to probably have some different aesthetics based in that biome, but that's going to be the main location of the game. There was also some smaller things like ability to push and throw things, the return of audio logs, and they talked about weapon variants a little bit, but I don't think those are as important, and this isn't a video breaking down the Q&A, so we're not going to really get into that. I have seen a ton of people on Twitter, and I'm not just talking, regular random people that play the game. I'm talking big Halo creators, big quote-unquote influencers in the scene, really up in arms over the fact that Halo Infinite is not going to have Playable Elites and Halo Infinite is not going to have dual wielding. And so I want to talk about these two things because while I do think it's somewhat of a bummer that we're not going to have Playable Elites or dual wielding, it really isn't that big of a deal. Sure, yeah, it's a bummer, no doubt. It is definitely a little bit disappointing, but the extent at which some people are making this the end of the world, 343 is done, 343 ruins Halo, it's kind of just annoying, and I'm getting to the point where I'm extremely sick of reading all this. And like I'm saying, this isn't just random people on Twitter. These are some of your big Halo YouTubers, some of your big Halo influencers, and I'm just sick of seeing people throw a fit about every single decision 343 makes. Because when you do this, when we actually have issues with the game that we want fixed, nobody's gonna listen because we've spent the past 4 years bitching and complaining about every small design choice that they have decided to make. When Halo Infinite comes out and it has some breaking ass game design and we all really want it fixed, it's gonna sound just like this. It's gonna sound just like when they had the audacity to add new Halo armors into Halo 3 in 2021. It's all gonna blend in because every time they do anything, the community just gets up in arms. Not the whole community. There's some people that have reasonable takes and I applaud them for having reasonable takes, but when some of your main creators and just the general community gets as up in arms every single time this happens, if I was 343, I would stop listening to the community because they have to stop bending backwards for what we want at some point when what we want is just the opposite of everything they do every single time. So not only am I talking about no Playable Elites and dual wielding, we also threw a fit when they put in those new armors into Halo 3 that don't necessarily match the aesthetic. And yeah, we got a toggle, and so that was probably a good change, and I'm glad that that happened. The extent at which people were throwing a fit as if this was ruining the Master Chief Collection was really off-putting to me because, let's be real, half of those people that are complaining about that and some of those big creators that are acting like adding new armors into Halo 3 MCC ruins the game because it ruins the aesthetic and absolutely destroys their opinion of that game, they don't even play MCC. So why does that matter? In this video, I'm specifically going to be focusing on some of the Infinite related design choices. So no Playable Elites, right? Playable Elites were added in Halo 2 as part of the fact that we could play the Arbiter's campaign, and then they were also brought into multiplayer where you could decide between playing a Spartan or an Elite depending on how you were feeling that day. They were then also brought into Halo 3 for kind of the same reason. Halo Reach dropped the Elites being played in the campaign as you only played the campaign as Noble 6, but in multiplayer there was still some parts of the game where you could play an Elite. It wasn't like Halo 2 and 3 though, where you could play them in any game mode. In Halo Reach, you could only play an Elite in Invasion or some of these specific Elite related playlists that kind of rotated in and out. Once 343 came in with Halo 4 though, they dropped Playable Elites, and Halo 5 also didn't have Playable Elites. A lot of people were hoping that Halo Infinite was going to bring back Playable Elites, and now unfortunately we know this isn't the case. And a lot of people are really upset about this as if, like I said, it's the end of the world and this is another reason why 343 sucks. Here's the thing though, while yeah, it's a bummer that Elites aren't playable, they really don't matter. In Halo 2 and Halo 3, they're literally just a skin for your character. Like in Halo 3, the hitbox was slightly different, and honestly, shouldn't have been in competitive play. You should not have been able to play an elite in ranked multiplayer, probably even social, because they were so annoying to shoot at. Like technically the hitbox was bigger, but if you were playing certain game modes like SWAT, then the hitbox of the head was really messed up because you couldn't shoot them very well from the back. The different hitboxes aren't good for a competitive game, and that's why you saw in tournaments and stuff, no one ever played elites and no one was allowed to play elites. But in matchmaking, you could switch between the two as you wish. In Halo Reach, it was totally different because the elites were totally bigger and had their own hitboxes and had their own health and shield attributes, so they weren't just a skin like they were in Halo 2 and 3. But like I mentioned earlier, in Halo Reach, they were more of their own thing. You had to play specific game modes built around them, and so it worked in those game modes because of the fact that they were a totally different size and a totally different hitbox and everything. If we're being honest, the amount of people that actually play an elite is pretty low. And so while I don't necessarily love 343's reasoning that the reason they're not having playable elites is because this is a Spartan story and they want to focus on Spartans, it's just not that big of a deal. Some people would pick elites in multiplayer, but honestly, I don't think elites should have ever been playable in matchmaking. I did enjoy them in their own specific game mode like Invasion or those specific playlists built around them in Reach, but I don't really enjoy in Halo 3 when I hop into rank and someone's playing elite. Just that little bit of change in the hitbox and everything can really throw you off, and that's not good for a competitive game. And so if 343 has determined that it's not worth the amount of time to model in elites and put all this work in for something that would be relegated to a little niche, then I totally understand that. Maybe they'll add them in post-launch, maybe they won't. At the end of the day, Halo isn't defined by whether or not you can play an elite in multiplayer. It's defined by so many other things that we don't even need to get into. I've seen people saying that playing an elite is what makes Halo Halo, and all these other weird takes that I don't get. And so that kind of takes us on to the next topic, no dual wielding. Now this one, I'm even less, I really didn't think that dual wielding was going to make a return in Halo Infinite because it had so many balance concerns in Halo 2 and Halo 3. Even Bungie themselves took it out of Halo and Halo Reach. So I don't know why people are even surprised by the fact that dual wielding isn't returning. Yeah, sure, it was like kind of cool and I enjoyed it in the campaign, but in multiplayer, it ruined the design and balance for a lot of the guns that were dual wieldable. And so I am perfectly on board with not being able to dual wield in Halo Infinite because I think the gun balance and the sandbox is better off without dual wielding. Sure, you can't feel like a badass running around with dual SMGs, but at the end of the day, you kind of have to pick and choose. Do you want the player to be able to feel cool with dual SMGs, or do you want a well-balanced sandbox for all the guns? I would lean much more towards that, and so I'm totally on board with no dual wielding. So all in all, yeah, this Q&A gave us some news that maybe some people in the community aren't that excited for, and I get that. Maybe you like to play an elite, or maybe you really like dual wielding, but I just want you to keep in mind, when you go out on Twitter and you go out on social media, you go on Reddit and you put out comments that say things like Infinite's going to suck because X or Infinite's ruined because of X, make sure you guys are picking and choosing things that are actually game ruining design. It's all going to come down to if Halo Infinite is fun, and while sure, maybe playing an elite adds some fun level to your game, it's so negligible to a majority of the player base that I don't see why it's as big a deal as people are making it out to be. Anyways, guys, that's going to kind of do it for the video. I wanted to make this video because I felt like as a community, and I know this isn't everyone in the community because anytime you have a large community, you know, there's always vocal minorities. I just wanted to put this out there and just kind of say, like, we got to really pick and choose our battles as fans of Halo and going into Halo Infinite, because there are going to be a lot of design decisions that we don't like or we want changed, but we can't get up in arms and throw absolute fits every single time they do something we slightly dislike. I would love to hear in the comments how you think a playable elite or how dual wielding or any of those other things that people have been throwing a fit about are the end of Halo or the reason Halo Infinite's going to suck. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. My next one of these semi-scripted voiceover style videos might actually be about Sprint, because I kind of want to talk about, similar to something like this, I want to talk about how I'm just sick of the Sprint debate. Whether or not you are pro or against Sprint, I think it's time that we move on and just kind of bury that debate, because Sprint's here to stay. But anyways, that video might come in the future. It might not if I get lazy. But regardless, if you guys want to catch me live, I've been streaming over over on my second channel, Arrrash TV on YouTube, or I'd still like if you followed me over on Twitch, because I'll probably start streaming there again at some point. You can also follow me on Twitter, and with that said, I'll see you all next time.